videotape this, and no matter what happens, do not stop filming.
So after my first phone call with Ryan, we talked a little bit afterwards, and he reached out and was explaining, hey, after I watched our first conversation, I realized there was a lot of stuff that I, kind of wanted to cover and, tell people about and talk about. And he asked if I'd, want to, meet up again and have another conversation just to kind of dive a little bit deeper into certain, questions that a lot of people ask. Just a little bit more detailed look at some of his mods and some of the process that he went through on, selecting certain parts for his build. And we even dug in a little bit to kind of what his experience has been with trying to balance preserving your vehicle's warranty while continuing to add modifications and make it more capable. And so he's got a couple, just words of advice and some, words of caution to share with people just as far as that goes, just kind of what to expect and things to look out for as you go about the process as it relates to your car's warranty. And then again, we just kind of hung out and talked about other things, just talked shop and had a good time. I always really enjoy talking to this dude, whether it's, via text or whether we're actually on the phone. Like ever since our last conversation, bro, we've been messaging back and forth on a daily basis. And he's just really excited to give information out there to help people because he was just sort of in the same place that I was when I got into this. There was nobody really guiding me, and I didn't have any knowledge that was already available mentally. I'd never been into off-roading, and so getting into it in the context of Subarus is even more difficult. So I think he's just real eager to kind of share with everybody and to help everyone who may want to do this get into it a little bit easier and give them some advice that may be of assistance as you go about it. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as the last one. And I never ask for subscribers, but every time I get new subscribers, it lets me know that people are actually getting help from this stuff. And the more subscribers that I get, the more it motivates me to want to take time out of, my regular work to bring videos to you guys. So if you do find any of this stuff helpful, just please, subscribe and, let me know the kind of content that would be helpful for you in your journey as you are venturing into off-road stuff. And I do want to ask also that you would reach out to Ryan on Instagram. His handle on there is Lifted Mick. Just search Lifted Mick. He'll come up. Ryan Wolf, that's his name. Just reach out to him, tell him what's up, and, thank him for, kicking it with me and to, just for helping educate people. And then lastly, I just would want to ask that if you guys get a chance, head over to the Lifted Imports website. Right now, I'm currently building an article for his build to just kind of outline everything that he's done and to give some insight for people who might have a similar vehicle. Head over, check out that website, read it, see what you think, and that's about all I got to say to that. Let's just jump in and see how it goes. So thanks for being here, and let's get started. All right, man. Dude, good to see you again, though, man. For real.
Glad to do this again.
Yes, for sure. Okay, let me pull up my notes. I saw some of the stuff you said.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into the name. I don't know if you want to kind of drop that in the beginning and let it marinate, and then we'll circle back at the end, or how you handle it. But yeah, the name Mick. Lifted Mick is the Instagram tag, but the name of the car is Mick. I came up with that. Originally, the wife wanted to name it Sir Lancelot. And that was a big firm hell no.
Ryan said, not happening.
No, that's not happening. So yeah, Mick is the name. It's a Subaru. That's the best hint I'm going to give you. Otherwise, I'll probably give it away. So let me kind of think on that, Mick, Subaru. See if you can put it together.
Off the top of my head, I can't, but let's see what happens as we talk. Well, let's see. Is there anything specific you want to talk about first, or should we just like jump into some of the stuff that?
Let's just dive on. And I wrote down a few notes just so I don't forget to mention some of the important things that I feel that I forgot to mention last time. But yeah, let's just dive on in with what you want to get into.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm just now kind of looking at the message that you sent me. About doing some, it looks like you did some preventative maintenance before you went ahead and upgraded the car. So it looks like you said you did some brakes.
Brakes was the most recent thing I did. Mm-hmm. That was super important because when I got those big tires on there, first time I went to stop, it wasn't like, oh, I don't have brakes, but it was a very noticeable difference. It took more braking to get the kind of braking reaction from the car, and I knew right away I was gonna have to upgrade those brakes. And yeah, I just got the EBC what is it, the towing package power stop or fastest stop towing package stage 9 EBC yellow stuff, and I went with those. Everybody recommended those. Hawkeye power stop. I went with those because those were the only ones I found that had a towing package. And eventually, I'm going to get a little camping trailer for that thing. And with those big tires, I just need the extra power for stopping for sure.
How did you notice like a marked difference in it when you went from stock pads to those?
Major difference. Mind you, it's with those are my first kind of high performance brakes like that or anything. So the braking in process is a lot different. You're not supposed to hit the brakes even hard for 1,000 miles. You still have to bed them in, of course. So you got to get them on a little firm, and major difference, bro. It is night and day. So the wife didn't care. I was like, did you notice? She didn't even notice. She's just like, well, whatever. She was like, am I safe? I was like, yeah, you're safe. The car will stop way faster. So that's all I care about. So that's all that really mattered to her. And on the trails, it'll be interesting. And if I ever get it out on a rally course, I'm kind of excited to see how they perform.
Oh, dude, I've heard nothing but good stuff about their brakes.
Right. One other thing I've heard is that especially they perform their best once you get them hot.
Mm-hmm. So. In your case, when you're trying to slow down a 30-inch diameter tire, bro, you need all the help you can get.
I didn't realize, because people have said it before, you'll need to upgrade your brakes. And I, honestly, before not knowing anything, I was just thinking, big giant, big giant Brembo racing brakes, but I'm not racing it, so I don't need that. And the smallest I could actually go with my wheels was 17-inch because of the stock size of the rotors and brake drums and calipers and everything, So realistically, that's where I want to stay as far as the size of those go. And eventually I'll probably get some aftermarket calipers to go with them, or I'll paint the ones I have. But I want to get some steel braided lines. Those were definitely recommended. I was told that would make a huge difference. But with the 3-inch lift, I can't just order steel braided lines for an Outback. I have to. Yeah. I now have to find somebody that will either make them or some that will fit, and I don't even know where to start.
I think that just ties into this whole idea that this is not just your car. This is like a family vehicle that needs to be safe, and I think your setup is like a perfect example of people who are kind of on the fence of, well, I really want something that's capable and maybe even just looks aggressive, but I don't want to piss off my wife, or I don't want to send my wife off, to soccer practice with our kids and something that's not safe,
Right. And the reality is, like, when I cut the bumper, Chris at SubiWorks pointed out to me while the bumper was off, you don't see it with the bumper on there, but attached to the front of the subframe is one of the possibly most important safety features of the car that I removed. Because it's these two triangle things that actually, on a front impact, it's what causes the subframe to collapse and drop the motor. It's a big safety feature, man. That's what absorbs your impact, and it does a lot. It stops you from getting crushed because the motor drops instead of coming through and crushing you, you know? But once you remove the bumper, those were totally exposed. And I mean, it looked terrible, but also realistically, if I'm off-roading, man, and I hit a stump or a rock with one of those, it's going to collapse my subframe, drop my motor, and I don't know, will that total my car? That seems like a pretty significant repair, you know? So I just kind of decided it's better to take those off than risk totaling the car. Obviously, I lost a little, maybe a 1-star safety rating by removing them, but you got to do what you got to do.
What were those visible on the vehicle at some point? Oh, can you say it one more time? I cut you off.
Not until you pull the bumper off or cut it like I did. You know, if you do the Viper cut, you can't see them. But if you cut it straight across like that, yeah, you can totally see them. But I actually took a video of me pulling it off and said, "Die, we die like men."
Yeah, and I would say,
like, so imagine this is your subframe. Obviously, I'm trying to get vertical instead of horizontal. So this is your subframe. On like this side of it, there's a triangle piece, and when you get in a hit, this will collapse. And so when those collapse, it folds your subframe in, and that will break your motor mounts, make your subframe drop, and cause your subframe to, drop your motor and cause your subframe to crumple, creating the crumple zone, which absorbs the impact. Yeah. So,
how did you take those off? Did they just unbolt?
Yeah, they were just like 3 bolts.
Okay. Yeah. Is there any way? Is it something that you could easily reinstall when you're not off?
Yeah, I have a pile of old parts.
How? Let's see. Is it accessible? Is it something that you could literally like just take off on the weekends when you're going to go up into the mountain?
Yeah, absolutely. I could throw it back on in 5 minutes if I wanted to.
Oh, perfect. Okay, I think that's important for people to know in case they're, maybe one of those people that's like, okay, I only take this off road.
Right. Well, and giving other people a big incentive to cut that bumper, man. It makes maintenance and stuff a lot easier. I didn't realize it because I haven't done it yet, but I've got the 60,000 mile service come up. I've actually got the fluids and stuff scheduled with Matt, Slow Foz Tuesday. And but I'm going to go ahead and do the spark plugs myself because looked at them on YouTube and stuff. On one side, it's real simple. The other side, you got to pull out the battery box and I think the air box or something. And it's kind of a pain. But I was looking at mine, and since my bumper's cut and my subframe drops 1/2 inch, I have access to all 6 of my spark plugs straight from underneath. So
that's awesome.
I should be able to do them in like 30 minutes myself. I know when I did my wife's ignition coils and spark plugs, it took me 15 minutes. So it's quite as easily accessible as that, but close enough. I don't have to take half the engine bay apart to get to one side.
Yeah. Did you mentioned that you've got those windshield sprayer reservoirs? Can you talk a little bit about those? Because the washer reservoirs are super ugly after a bumper cut.
Yes, it was a must. I seen some people say just paint them black, and I was just like, God, no! Like, it doesn't make it invisible. Number one, number two, it's totally exposed to hit something and just get ripped off your car. But yeah, I actually did that before I took it to California. I had everything pulled off the bottom. The whole bottom of the bumper was unhooked, and I just removed the reservoir and then installed. I got 2 of them because there's front and rear on the Outback of the windshield washers, and they're literally they hold about 12 ounces, about a Coke can. So you really don't get much fluid in them if you really have to wash your fluid. I'm actually going to start carrying a little extra bottle of it because I'm on the trail and I use them. That's it. I'm done for 1 spray, 1 wash. But it accomplished the goal. I got rid of that big giant thing in front of my front tire. They're in my hood, nice tucked away in a nice spot. I still have functioning windshield wipers, so they did the job. A lot of people save a lot of money, and if I knew more and I felt more comfortable, I probably would have just done the same. But I've seen people just use water bottles. They just pull the pumps off their reservoirs, stick them into a water bottle, and mount it somewhere under the hood, and they're golden.
Bro, you know what's funny? That's exactly what I did on my Forester. I took a bike, like a water bottle for a bicycle.
Exactly.
Bro, it already came with a holder. So I was like, dude, this is perfect. So I just used an existing bolt hole I've stuffed it up into the fender, like out of sight.
Right.
And, bro, yeah, it sucks because I got to refill it more often, but it's like, I just pull it up out of there, pour some distilled water or some washer fluid, and it's Gucci.
Right. Hell yeah. It's it's a little bit of a pain. I wish they held more water. And I finally figured out last time on this trail ride because somebody saw it. I had been wondering. Whenever I go off road, I can see all the mud and dirt that's dripping down from where the water would come out of the back windshield. And so what I realized, because it takes almost a whole can just to fill the line to get it to where it starts to spray. And so what I would always do is I would basically prime it whenever I would fill the line up, and then fill the can back up. But as soon as I would go off road and get that car vertical, all the fluid would just come right out of the line. So I'm not going to waste my time doing that anymore. But like I said, it's about the fluid in the can is what it takes to fill the line. So I got to deal with the front too, because it doesn't seem to do as much pressure. And in the front windshield, there's actually 3 squirts, 2 on the passenger, 1 in the driver's side. And because of the way the lines go, I just don't think they put as much pressure as the stock ones do, because it doesn't squirt nearly as far with the 2 on the passenger side, and the 1 on the driver's barely a dribble. So I've find the lines so I can clamp one of them. But once they go back behind it's a single line, and once it goes back behind like the firewall is where it splits lines. And I haven't pulled off the firewall to try and clamp it yet, to just deal with what it is.
Yeah. Let's see. Where did you mount those reservoirs?
I got one mounted basically. They're right by the battery box. One mounted right by the fender, in between the battery box and the fender and the fuse box. And then the other one's basically on the other side of the battery, in the very front of the car, between like the grill and the battery. And it works well because they give you like 5 or 6 different mounts to choose from. So I had to spend a little time like looking at the mounts, trying to figure out which one would work, how I wanted to mount it. And then when they got here, they weren't going to work exactly like I thought they would. So I was going to have to, bend them and make them work. And I honestly thought I was going to have to heat them up with a torch. And I thought it was going to be like a real issue, because if you've ever tried to bend metal, sometimes it'll bend and then it snaps. It's like some metal ain't meant to bend. And so I was really afraid if I tried to bend that, it would just snap. But it actually just bent with no problem. Put a freaking hammer to it, just bent it just the way I needed it with both of them. Both of them I had to do a little bit differently, but they both fit perfectly. And one actually had a slot where I was just able to use nuts and bolts and mount it right there. And on the other one, I just used a couple of self-tapping screws.
Mm-hmm. I love self-tappers, man. They're the ultimate problem solver, bro.
Go for that, because I went over to Uncle Bill's house for just in case I needed some help, and I already had a plan. So he's like, "You already know what you're gonna do, And then I was like, "Yeah, we need to drill some holes right here." He's like, "Dude, I got self tappers. We don't need to drill any holes." I'm like, "Well, those work. Like those will hold this thing off road and vibrate, and like I don't have to worry about that thing." He's like, "No, like self tappers ain't going nowhere. They hold buildings together." And I was like, "All right."
I feel like anybody that's got an Uncle Bill is always got just the most tits ideas ever.
Right. And he was a contractor too. That was like the hilarious thing. It's like me and my wife were watching a show one day, and like the contractor on the show was like Uncle Bill, and it's just we just laughed because it's like every contractor there's a Bill. Every contractor is Bill or Bob. It's just like every one of them.
The main one of the owners of my company, or one of the companies that I work for, her dad's name is Bill, and the other owner, they're actually related, so it's his. We just call him Uncle Bill, but he's the guy that does all of our clinic build outs. He's just this dude that's done everything. Like he's built boats, he's built high rises, he's built houses. You're just like, Uncle Bill's got it.
Legit.
Yeah.
His wife's a realtor, so like she'll get houses and he'll fix them all up, and then they resell them. That they make a perfect team.
Yeah. Oh, your wife does real estate?
No, his wife. His wife.
I got you. Okay, sorry, I
Good.
misunderstood. That's what's up. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point that you brought up about the windshield washer reservoirs at first. Because a lot of people think, oh, it just looks ugly. But yeah, you mentioned like, I don't want that getting ripped out in the middle of you got a branch that comes up and just grabs it and then rips everything out. It's like, dude, now, and you guys get so much dust. We get a lot of that out here too. And you need that. If you don't have the washer, bro, you're going to have to get out every 5 minutes and dump water.
Pretty much. Yeah, and the funny thing was, I didn't even know, the window washer was or the reservoir was an issue until the bumper got taken off and we got stuck. And then when I saw that there with a bumper, I was like, what the hell am I going to do with this stupid washer reservoir? It's right in front of the tire. Like, what kind of idiot would put this right here? And it's like, but they're like that in all the new cars.
Yeah, all my other Subarus. So dude, I've probably owned minimum 20 Subarus. I'm just a maniac. But they all
cars that I've owned. I've owned at least a dozen cars, but 20 Subarus.
Yeah, I don't know, man. And the majority of any car that I've ever owned has been a Subaru. I've owned 3 cars in my whole life that weren't. Other than that, it's always been Subarus. But the old ones you've probably seen them, they had a reservoir that came off the strut tower in the under the engine bay on the driver's side. And so you didn't have to worry about it. But the new...
Not now.
Yeah, and I get it. They're trying to make room for all these other creature comforts and stuff.
Right.
And plus all the added emissions crap that's got to go under the hood. It's like, God, cut me a break.
I want to say it's Matt Slowfuss. I could be wrong, but he has several, like 6 or 7 Subarus, and he has 1 or 2 classic ones. And at the Cars and Coffee meetup, he had one of them, and I tripped out because under the hood is the spare tire.
Yes, like an old '86 or whatever.
Bro, when I saw that, I was like, "What?"
Yeah. They did a few different cars like that. I think some of the Brats had the spare tire under the hood. Maybe I've never owned anything that classic. The oldest Subaru I've owned has been a '93. But yeah, dude, that blew my mind the first time I saw it too. I was like, "What the fuck?"
Those don't go here. There's nothing wrong with it. What doesn't belong in this picture?
What? Like, where's Waldo, bro? Like, what's going on here?
It does not go there at all.
I like that guy's build. He's got that SH Forester with that custom bumper on it.
Yeah, and he just put this Gorilla long travel suspension on it, man. And he spent some time doing some tuning, and he's got limiter straps on it, and it's got some crazy flex. Like I want to see it out there in action, like really getting put to the test.
He's got limiter straps on it.
Yeah, he got so much flex out of that thing that he had to put limiter straps on it, bro. It's
you got to make sure you're not ripping brake lines and
right. Well, it wasn't to that extreme, but when I finally pulled my sway bars, I didn't know what it was, and like I didn't even bother to Google. I was just like, whatever, it's got to come off. It doesn't really matter what it is, because with this, as we talked before, how the sway bars limit the movement. I looked when I was going to pull one off, and off of the rear control arm, there's this little sensor that is meant to flex with the control arm. And like I said, I didn't know what it was, but it had to go because now that I was removing the sway bars, it was going to drop more than that thing would allow. And it's just a little skinny, I don't want to call it plastic, but it was not going to stop it from going any further. It was just going to get broken. So I removed it. And then for about a month, I was driving around with my brights on and people kept flashing me. And I didn't realize my brights were on.
Was that? Yeah. Is that the like auto leveling headlights?
Yeah.
Okay.
They still turn left to right. I don't know if they go up or down anymore, but they had my brights locked on. And so I was going to go do some testing with it and see if I could put it back on and maybe if it wasn't too short. And through messing with it, trying to get it back on, I realized right away it was going to be too short. Getting it back on was not an option. But I must have moved the sensor around because it turned my brights off. And that's what mattered.
Okay.
I might try to, fab up a spring and some sort of mount so I can put it back on. And then when it reaches that limit, the spring kicks in and we'll still, tell the sensor that it's at limit, but it won't break it.
Yeah, we don't want to break stuff like that.
And it's one of those things, like it's not on there. It doesn't seem to really be affecting anything. I would like to have all the function of the lights, but it's just one of those things when you start messing with these newer cars that have all these little, gadgets and computerized mechanisms and sensors, you might start running into issues,
Yeah. Well, like I said, all my other Subarus, a lot of them have been old,
Right.
It's been difficult to kind of adapt to some of the new stuff because I'm like, I can just rip all this crap out of here. And you do that, you're like, oh, okay, that was a problem.
Like that wasn't something like really important when I took it off, It's like I said, I didn't even bother to take 5 minutes to Google it.
Yeah.
It's got to come off, so it doesn't matter what it is.
Do you think you would have run into a problem at a lower lift, or was it just because you were at 3 inches?
I think I would have been fine at 2, because I was coming up about 3/4 of an inch, maybe an inch short. So I probably would have been fine at 2.
I want to ask you this question about jumping up to 3 inches. There's a lot more money and work involved just in the jump from like 1.5 or 2 to 3 inches. What was it that made you just like, because it felt like when we first talked, it felt like you were just dead set on like, I'm doing 3 inches, I don't give a fudge. What was your process?
Like I said, it came as a product of getting stuck, but also my go big, go home, all or nothing mentality. When I got stuck, I wanted a 4 to 6 inch lift. Like I said, I didn't know anything, so I'm thinking Toyotas and trucks, 4 to 6 inch lift, no problem. So then discovering that was not going to be as easy as I wanted, and it was going to be a lot of money and a lot of. I was going to have to drop the motor and the subframe in the front, not the subframe, but I was going to have to drop the engine and tranny and everything like 3 inches in the front to accomplish a 5 inch lift. But I guess the motivation behind it was just I wanted as much lift as possible. And once I decided to do it, it was just like I kind of wanted the baddest Subaru on the planet. I wanted to just like, holy but I had to back off of that plan, and I was kind of compromised with the 3 inch, and also the budget was not going to allow for me to do that, and once again, doing that, God knows what that would have done to the wife's daily driver. That could have caused a lot of problems dropping the engine, because I watched a few videos of people that put monster lifts on their Forester, and they did drop their engine 4 inches, and they did it successfully, but there's never a 6 month or 1 year update video on those.
Yeah, I actually got to this point. I don't know if you've seen my Forester. It's just lifted 2 inches. And I got to this point where I was like, all right, cool. I've built this up to where I want it, and I've got a little bit of money. I want to go ahead and do like a 6 inch lift. And as I looked into it and started thinking about it, I was like, well, next I got to figure out how to do a dual range gearbox. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to accomplish with a bigger lift is more tire.
Yeah.
Because more tire is just like, that's the ultimate goal. But then I just realized, I was like, I'm kind of already at the limit of what this car wants to spin, unless I want to spend $6,000. And so I just went and bought like a Jeep XJ, because I was like, well, I only spent $4,000 on it. It was already lifted. And I was like, I can take this out when I want to be real ignorant. So that was the route I decided to go. So listening to you talk about just being like, F it, I'm just going to do a bigger lift on this thing. I think that's tight, man, because I took the easy way out.
Well, it was, it might have just been ignorance and stubbornness, and the fact of the matter is that it wasn't a $2,000 car that I could just go sell and replace. I was invested in this car, and it was wait years and years till we get another one and and start. And that was one of the things too, where we can kind of get into the warranty stuff, was I had a discussion with the wife about the warranty because this was a car where I actually paid for that extra warranty. Normally, I don't do that, but I got the bumper to bumper, the 100,000 mile warranty with this car, and with her, I couldn't like try to avoid everything. You know, it was bad. You asked me last time if I maybe regrets or would have done anything a little differently. As awesome as it looks, knowing what I know now, I probably would not have gone as big of a tire. Just because of the negative effects and not even gas mileage. Like I can eat the gas mileage. It's harder to turn, you know, and without that low gear, it hurts me on those hills, you know, and I didn't think about those things. I just thought max lift, biggest tire I can fit, you know. So now it's been a learning process. The whole thing has been a learning process. Would I do the same thing again? Maybe, but now that has 30-inch tires, I don't think there's any going back. I don't think I can. I don't think I can put smaller tires on the car now that I've seen it like that. It's just
Yeah, it's tough because it looks super good when you've got filled out wheel wells. You've got that extra, like that's true. That's where true ground clearance comes from. You know,
right.
is from that extra sidewall. You know, and a lot of people
I
don't think.
didn't know that though because I gained 2 inches of lift. Those tires gave me 2 inches of lift.
Yeah, so you're probably all said and done. Did you do any diff measuring before and after?
No, I just measured from the side of the car. You know, the bottom of the side. I didn't go in and get underneath. You know, right next
Okay.
to it or anything. You know, so right next to the car before the tires. Well, before the lift, it was 8 3/4. After the lift, it was 12 inches. After the tires, it's 14.
That's awesome. Well, what
Go ahead.
what a lot of people don't understand is when you're talking about lift kit um, sizes, you're actually gaining more than what the just the lift itself is, because once you add that lift to the to the suspension, it like compounds itself a little bit. I can't remember how it all works with all the geometry and everything, but if you have a 2 inch lift, for example, you might end up with an additional 3 or 3.5 true inches of ground clearance. Like I said, I can't remember how all the geometry works, and I'm kind of stupid.
No, I think you're right because like I said, I started at 8 3/4, you know, and when I got home, it was at 12. So that was 3 1/4 inches, you know.
Yeah, I love that, man. I love how that works.
And
Um,
you asked me last time, and I got sidetracked on the max travel, but max lift on the GR Plus is 3 inches. That's why I chose that. The GR, the other ones are two. You know, and they have models for all, you know, Broncos. They're actually coming out with all kinds of different suspensions for lots of different cars now, not just Subarus.
yeah, I actually looked at their website again because it's been a while since I've uh, looked at their site, and I was looking at it after talking to you when I was writing out some stuff, and I was like, oh, whoa, like they're really branching out, and I think they make good stuff. You know.
That's what I heard, you know, and it was just I heard lots of good things from everybody, but that was the one that could facilitate what I wanted right out the gate, you know, with the overload and the adjustability. And it just seemed like with all the other suspensions, it seemed like other people were having to go back later and get overload springs or go back and compensate for sag somehow. And it just with that suspension, it didn't seem like that was going to be an issue at all.
Yeah, and I usually tell people the same thing. In my case, I do a lot of solo stuff. It's just me, no passengers. I don't carry a lot of gear. I'm
Right.
usually not doing overnight stuff. So I'm like, dude, I don't care. I don't have a spare tire because my tires are such overkill. I'm like, I'm not blowing these up. And if I do, I've got enough stuff to repair it to get me home. Um, but the majority of people, I'm like, yo, I know you're about to like get white girl wasted and go camping and have your like sick little Insta setup.
Right,
Get
right.
the get the new spring rate. Do you are you pretty stoked on how it turned out with the overload springs that you got from them?
It is. It is. That was one thing I did want to dive back into it. When you mentioned realistic expectations, I think I might have been a little too excited. Uh, People got to understand that when you change a stock vehicle, it is built that way for a reason. It's going to um, function at its best, at its prime, at its peak, gas mileage, performance. Obviously not race car performance, but handling and comfort and ride quality. You're not going to get better than your stock suspension with your stock tires. That's how the car is built and designed to operate. The moment you change suspension, it's going to be a little stiffer. The guy at Subi works in Tempe told me that when I first started initially doing it. He's like, you don't want to do this. You're going to ruin your ride. You're going to ride like a truck. It's like, bro, just do it in my car. And he wasn't lying. It's not nearly as bad as he said it was, but having it happen the way it did, getting the lift and then having the stock tires still on for several months and then getting the tires, that was where I really noticed the difference. I could notice, obviously, it had a stiffer suspension, so it was a little more bounce. It wasn't quite as smooth as the stock. But once I put those tires on, it was when I could really tell that affected the ride a lot. So keep that in mind when you're selecting tires. Like what are you really going to be doing with it? Are you going to be off-roading it all the time? Is that what's most important, is having a functional off-road tire? Or is this mostly going to be the soccer mom car, and it's more important that you have a smooth ride but have some off-road capability when you need it? It affects your gas mileage, but it also, those BFG KO2s are solid, hard-ass rock tires. And you feel every little bump on the streets. That's for sure.
Yeah, I always try to tell people that they really need to gauge where they're at, because it's, for me, I try to come into that tire conversation with the understanding that, dude, I do not give a fudge about ride quality.
Right.
And I try to tell people, hey, my Forester is 90% off-road usage. Like it's not a daily. I don't have to have the car on the road. Like I can flop the car and it doesn't affect my life. Like I can blow it up and it doesn't affect my life. And so I always try to tell people, like, you really need to understand that when I tell you, hey, this is my favorite tire, you need to actually sit down and think about, like, okay, do I want my daily commute to be rough and sucky and loud? Or are you one of those enthusiasts that's like, no, that's all part of the fun?
Yeah, I don't really think the tires are that loud. Like on the highway, you notice it if you're listening for it. But the road noise that really comes from those big wide tires, man. It's not just the off-road tires. Like when you hear those tires rumbling down the road, it's always 12, 13, 14, 15-inch wide tires. It's not 8 or 9-inch wide tires. Obviously they're a little louder, but it's not. I think people put too much stock in the road noise.
Yeah. What was kind of your process? Did you go with the KO2s? I kind of want to talk about everything, like the selection process for the size, the selection process for the brand and model of tire that you went with. And then I also want to talk about fitment, like how hard was it to get those suckers to fit in there with your specific setup, and how much room do you have? And then I even want to talk about like fuel economy and stuff like that. So yeah, what was yeah, that's always a sore point, bro. But first, yeah, let me ask, what was your initial your initial reasoning and kind of your rationale when you decided, yeah, let me just go ahead and get like one of the heaviest duty all-terrain tires and put it on a family car? What kind of led you to that decision?
I've always loved the BFG KO2s, just the way they look. Those meaty ass tready tires, man. They just look like they ripped the face off a dolphin, man. It's bad, man. It's bad. And but another thing was with the reason why I had to get the wheels was to facilitate those tires. I could not get the BFG KO2s in an 18-inch wheel or an 18-inch tire. And the only ones I could get were super expensive. And it's like, if I'm going to pay that much money for tires, I'm going to get the ones I want. So why not spend an extra 4 figures and get wheels?
Well, let me say this real quick before we go any further. I think it's really funny that people never want to downsize because they're like, I don't want to pay extra for wheels. But right. Dude, just the rim diameter, even if it's physically more tire, they're less expensive.
Yeah, that was how I sold it to the wife.
Yeah, It's crazy because it's like 5 sets down the road, I'm saving money. Like I've paid for it my second set, bro.
That's exactly what I told the wife. I said, look, like I know this isn't part of the budget, and I sold the wheels and tires. That wasn't part of the budget, because we needed tires anyways. And I sold buying wheels is because I can't get the tires we want, and the tires are cheaper if we go down a size of wheel. And just like you said, a few sets of tires, and the wheels will pay for themselves. So that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, I also love the fact that the extra sidewall, just from just 1 inch in overall diameter that's added from sizing down your wheel, gives you a quieter ride. Yeah, I mean, obviously you're going with an aggressive tire, but just the more sidewall you have, the more comfort you kind of get. And man, you can air down like crazy with more sidewall.
I've only gone down to 20 so far. I've only aired down twice. I've only gone down to 20. Matt and John from Mountain View Z have told me to go down all the way down to 12, 15. That's scary, man. Because I'm not afraid to get sideways on things, man, and putting all that pressure up on a hill on 12 or 15 pounds of pressure.
Yeah.
You can see myself popping off a bead. And I actually just saw a video last week of somebody playing around in the dunes in a Subi, and 12 to 15 pounds of pressure, and they popped one of their beads right off.
Yeah, if you're because in the Jeep, I usually will go down. We'll pull valve stems. Like we just straight pull valve stems because we're most of us are running tires that are such a heavy duty ply rating that it's like in my Jeep the curb weight on that thing from the factory is like 3,400 pounds. So it weighs the same roughly as the Forester.
Right.
But on these, and I'm just on 33s right now. But my homies that are on 37s, boom, just valve stems, put them in the pocket, and just run open.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but it's a game changer. It's next level. I want to touch on airing down in a bit, but before I lose my train of thought, were there any thoughts or any other tires that you considered? Anything before you said, all right, these are the tires I want? Was there any doubts that you had or any other things that you thought maybe would be a better fit?
Not as far as fit, but as far as, gas mileage. Like I knew from what I had heard and, everything that people had told me that these tires were going to hurt my gas mileage more than any of the other tires because they are big, heavy, heavy truck tires. They're not Subaru tires. These are meant for trucks. Outside of that, I wanted BFGs from the jump. I used to have BFGs on my little 2-wheel drive, 4-cylinder gutless pig of an Isuzu Rodeo.
Oh, those are sick.
Yeah, it was a 98, bro. It looked really clean. I put some nice wheels and tires on it with those BFGs, and I would go off roading in that thing, man. And I about made my cousin pee his pants climbing the hill a couple times in that thing. Yeah,
bounce rev limiter.
It was hilarious because like I wasn't gonna climb the hill. I pulled up to the bottom. I kind of looked at it, and like I looked at him. He's like, "Bro, you ain't gonna make it. Don't do it." And it's like that's the last thing you got to say to me because it's like challenge accepted. Watch this. And I did. First shot, right up the hill,
Yeah, I feel the same way because I run KM3s on the Jeep. So it's just the mud terrain version of what you have.
Right.
And I think that sidewall is so tastefully done. Like whoever was like whatever team designed the BFG, just their off-road stuff, dude, whoever was in charge of that, I think they nailed it.
Yeah, I mean they're one of the best for a reason, and not just along with the look and the way I've always liked the tire. Like that was another reason that kind of made me say F it, I'll eat the gas mileage. Was the comfort, and I don't mean comfort in ride, the comfort in like peace of mind when I'm out there and I know that my sidewall is going to grind on that tire. Like I'm more worried about my rim than I am cutting the tire. It's just the peace of mind, just like that little bit of extra lift that I have, the peace of mind when I'm coming up on something and I know I can just center it and I'm going to clear it. It's just, peace of mind is priceless.
Yeah. I try to tell people that all the time with a lot of different things where it's like, okay, you can spend an extra 10, 15%, but yeah, that might hurt your wallet a little bit, but it's like, you're out in the middle of nowhere. Do you want to wonder if your air compressor is going to fire up?
Right.
I don't. I'll pay an extra $150 for an air compressor that I know is not going to fail on me. Like, the F you think?
Absolutely. And it's worth it. I don't have the air compressor. I can't wait to get the air set up and I start being able to air down on my own. And now that I've done it, it makes you not want to be able to off. It makes you not want to go off road unless you can.
Yeah. I've started carrying air compressors in all my cars all the time. Even my daily, I keep one in there. I don't even have a spare tire in my daily, bro. I just keep an air compressor and tire plugs. Yeah, I might blow out a sidewall on something crazy, but I'll just call AAA. or some other roadside assistance. I'm not a huge fan of AAA, but what was your approach to size selection? Did you get outside, take a tape measure, and kind of see like, okay, here's what I've got for room, or what was your process on that whole thing?
I put a lot of faith in the Subaru community and the forums. If you're on any of those groups, it's a daily question, and it's almost like, Jesus Christ, weren't you here yesterday? But even when I went to ask it, it was like, man, I don't want to be the guy today that's asking. Like somebody was asking yesterday, But it's very helpful because I talked to several people, and when somebody is telling you what their lift setup is and what their tire setup is, and this guy's telling you and that guy's telling you, it enables you to kind of gauge. And like I did, I kind of rolled the dice because like one person told me he had the 245 60 R17s on his stock height with no rub.
Wow.
Yeah.
245 65?
It was 245 65 R17s.
That's a burly boy right there. No rub.
Yeah, and so and that's stock height, okay? And then another guy told me he had 245 75 R17s and he had to do a little trimming. And he was lifted 2 inches. So I was like, okay, I'm lifted 3, no rub, da da da. I cut the middle. I went 245 70 R17s and hoped for the best. Before I went to the shop, I cut the front bumper, so that wasn't even a concern. They definitely would have rubbed if that front bumper was there, for sure.
Okay.
In the front, they only rubbed a little bit in the back of the tire when you would crank it all the way.
Now, did it rub just on the plastic fender liner, or was it actually going all the way in and touching the pinch weld?
Ironically, in the front where it was rubbing, because I have those aftermarket mud flaps, what it was rubbing on was the actual bolt or the screw that holds that on.
Oh,
so
okay.
what I actually had to do was first I tried, and mind you, it was just rubbing so little. I just needed millimeters to not get rubbed. First I tried to remove the little rubber washer, and that didn't give me quite enough room. So what I ended up doing, if you ever heard of a bunionectomy?
Is that where they go in and shave the bone down?
That's what I thought it was, but basically they go out and cut out a section of your bone and pull it together.
No, oh, bro.
It's more than that, but then because I need to get one done. So when they told me, they basically cut out a section of your bone and then pull it back together to line everything back up with your toes. But so that's basically what I did. If I didn't have aftermarket mud flaps, it would have been so much easier. I could have just cut away a little bit of plastic and rolled. But in order to keep my mud flaps on and make room, what I had to do was cut away a little section of the plastic trim behind where the mud flap is. And then I used my metal wire to literally pull my mud flap back and just give me just enough clearance for my wheel to turn and not rub.
Man, look at the tire surgeon, Ryan, over here performing bunionectomies on the.
I'm not even kidding, bro, because when the idea popped in my head. Like if I hadn't been at the podiatrist a few months earlier, learning about a bunionectomy, I don't even know if I would have thought to cut out a section of that plastic and pull it back.
That's so funny. But dude, that's brilliant.
It worked, bro. Like it's sometimes you just do what you gotta do to get the job done, you know. And it's like I said, there's more things I need to button up in there because I did have to cut away some plastic and I had to make some things happen. So like when I go mudding, it's a problem. That's why I haven't gone mudding anymore. It's the problems that you have when you start modifying things and start cutting plastic and chopping things. And
how much did it all rub on those? It sounds like you cut your fender liners. How much did they rub?
I cut the ones in the back. The ones in the front, the ones in the front I did cut a little bit, but I basically cut where because the mud flap kind of mounted here. So I cut the fender liner behind the mud flap to make just, that much more room. That was the only place I had to cut the fender liner in the front. In the back is where I had to cut a little hole in the behind the back tire. And it's I think somewhat poor design on Subaru's part to design that part of the fender liner to come out. Because literally the whole fender liner is nice and even, but then that one little section where I came out, it pops out. Maybe like a quarter of an inch to half an inch. And that little box is what I had to cut out.
Okay.
And right that was the pinch weld. And that I had to hammer back because it was maybe, not even a quarter of an inch where that sharp pinch weld. And it was the actual corner of the pinch weld that was right behind that tire. And I wasn't sure if fully flexed I would rub that or not, but I knew that pinch weld would certainly cut my tire.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many tread blocks I've sacrificed thinking like, oh, I wonder if this will rub. Yep, it'll rub. Just cut it. Just fold it. Okay, so let's see. to fit those tires, you had to modify your mud flaps. You had to do some basic trimming on the fender liners, and you hammered the pinch welds just in the back or in the front as well?
There was no pinch welds to worry about in the front, but just in the back. But keep in mind, in the front bumper was cut. If the front bumper was there would have been a lot more that had to do to make those fit.
How much of the front bumper do you think would have been in the way of that tire?
A lot.
Yeah.
Just judging, when you look at the newer Subarus as opposed to a lot of the trucks, they have a very narrow wheel well, whereas a lot of the trucks, they kind of open up and come down at an arch, whereas Subarus, they come straight down. Once they make the downward turn, it's a straight line.
Boom.
So when I look at how far my tire sticks past where that line drops, I think I would have had to cut a lot of the front bumper to make that. It would have been I would have had to have been a Viper cut. I think is what I would have probably had to do to make it look okay.
Yeah. I think people have to recognize if they want to kind of push up to the top end of tire size on those cars. There really is like a lot of plastic sacrifice that has to happen.
Yeah. Like I said, it would have been a lot easier without the mud flaps. Keeping those mud flaps made things a little more complicated. I had to get a little more creative because it's not like they were, $1 million, but I think they were like $180. I don't want to throw $180 in the trash. Plus, they look cool. I want to keep them on there.
So you think the stock mud flaps would have fit better?
Honestly, I thought the new mud flaps would give me a little bit more room, but because of I think because of the bolts and the rubber spacers and washers, it really didn't make a difference. That was kind of my getting them to was, okay, this will make some more room. Because when you look at, where you're going to take the mud flaps off, it does look like it's going to make some more room. But once you put them on there, the new ones on there, it really didn't make a big difference.
Okay, well, that's good to know because I've always, on all my Subarus, I've always found the stock mud flaps, they're so bulky. It's like, Oh, man. Okay, that's interesting.
I didn't even really consider what it had on there to actually be mud flaps. Like, it was just like a little plastic piece that only came down a few inches, And the mud flaps I got, I actually think that I got the extra long ones. So they actually hang down lower.
Yeah, and I don't know, did you run those tires before you had the mud flaps?
No, actually, the mud flaps was one of the early things I did before the lift kit. It was kind of a process, before I took it to California. I prepped the bumper, I removed the washer reservoir, put in the new reservoir. Um, what else did I do? I wrote it down here so I wouldn't forget. Oh, I went and got the front windows tinted, and I had the tint visor installed, which is something they say can't get done to Subarus. But let me get back to that. And then I did the what else was it? Reservoir. Oh, I put the what are they called? The window visors on your windows, and I highly recommend everybody to get the inset ones. Don't get the ones you stick to the outside. Like I was going back and forth for a little while, and I finally just said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and get these ones because I couldn't really find any good pictures of them. So I went ahead and just went with the inset ones. And after seeing them on my car versus seeing them glued to the outside, night and day difference.
Yeah, if you have a door frame, because older Subarus were just a frameless window design, but if you have frames, 10 out of 10 people should get the ones that go up into the channel. Like that's
right.
No brainer. Yeah, and they look.
And then good. Going back to the oh yes, thank you. Going back to the tint visor, some places straight flat out say they won't do it because of the eyesight. So I had to call a few different places, and one of them had done it a few times. And they're like, yeah, we can do it. We just have to cut around the eyesight, and it hasn't caused any issues. They said if it's interfering and we need to cut out a little bit more, bring it back, let us know. I haven't had any issues. The adaptive cruise control still works. The lane functioning still works, which is something that they warned me about lifting. They told me I might have to go get it recalibrated after lifting it. I haven't had any issues with it.
Cool. That was actually a question I wanted to ask you was I can see what people search on the website. Like I can pull up a report of all the searches that have gone through the search bar. And that's a big one. So I'm always asking people like, hey, how did your eyesight react to this? And yeah, right. I will hear people that will just like to the death say, don't lift it. It'll ruin your eyesight. Your car will crash and blow up. And everybody that I talk to that's actually done it has said, bro, it's as if it never happened. They're like, it's no problem.
Yeah, the dealership had me worried because, like I said, I spent a lot of time on phone with service managers and warranty companies, just talking to all kinds of people, and so they had me worried. Like I had actually put that into the budget. I think it was $200 or $300 to go get it recalibrated. I could be wrong; it's a lot of numbers, but that I made that part of the budget because this is going to have to be done after we get the lift put on. But first thing I did after the lift was get on the freeway, set the cruise control, put on the lane correction, let the car drive itself for a minute, and it corrected itself. It did what it's supposed to do.
That's awesome. With the tires, like I said, I know I'll forget to ask these questions if I don't ask them now. But the gas mileage, what is, just like rough estimate, what do you feel like you get if you were to just average everything out?
I haven't done the mathematical formula to actually offset the larger tires to what it's actually doing to my odometer, because several people have told me it's not as bad as I think it is because I'm not actually putting on as many miles as my odometer says I am. But just off of what my odometer says, I lost at least 8 to 10 miles a gallon.
Okay. Oh, dude. Okay, so you're running a 245/70. Let's see, odometer. I'm just going to look this up right now.
Yeah, because I know there's a formula for it to actually, because it affects miles per hour, it affects your odometer. So when I first said somebody like, oh my God, like it killed my mileage, they're like, no, like it affected your mileage, but you're not driving nearly as many miles as your odometer says you are. That's why you really got to balance what's your priority, because if you're going to be driving a lot of miles and it's going to be a huge expense and you don't really need those big heavy tires, don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me see here. What's the original tire size?
I don't remember.
Outback.
I know it's an 18-inch wheel and it's not a very tall tire.
Yeah. Sorry, I know this is like eating up some time, but I'm like really curious.
Saturday morning, bro. I got all day.
Let me see here.
man. I even have my fog lights that I pulled out of the bumper.
Okay.
I want to figure out how to get them mounted back on the front because it's already, all the wiring's already done. I just got to plug them back in. So I just need to figure out, either fab up a mounting bracket or find one somewhere that will work. But they'll look legit, I think, the way I want to mount them up.
Yeah.
That AZ John Smith, he did a very similar thing because he's got his bumper. He's got a different rear, but his bumper is cut much similar to mine. And he just mounted some fog lights up underneath where he cut his bumper.
Yeah, I did a similar thing where I took the wiring for the fog lights that were in my car, and I just like wired a pigtail that would plug right into the stock harness and everything, so it's still just like super stock, and then just wired an aftermarket one that would fit. I might have actually just cut those other sides off of something out of the junkyard. I don't remember now. But yeah, I just push my regular fog light button and boop, they come on. I'm like, yeah.
What I'm saying, like, it's already wired, it's already installed in the car. It's part of the factory procedure. So it's just a matter of finding some mounting brackets and mounting them back on there, and they'll look legit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that'll be cool.
The aerodynamics really only matter so much, highway speeds. But, when it's just a multitude of things. When you combine, people talk about lift affecting your mileage. Not so much, man. The aerodynamics of cutting that bumper combined with those big ass tires, that's what's really, and given the fact that I did it the way I did, not because I wanted to, just the way things worked out with the bumper cut, then the lift, and then months without the tires, then getting the tires, really seeing where the mileage change happened was with the tires, night and day. There was no denying it.
Yeah, well, they're heavier, and rotational, like unsprung weight and rotational mass. That's where you just get like a compounding effect, because you could put 100 pounds in the trunk of the car, whatever. You add 100 pounds to the rotational mass that has to be spun by the engine and transmission, and it's like you can feel it immediately.
Oh yeah, and I definitely can see, because with that 3.6R, it gets up and goes, bro. I think it has 256 horsepower.
268.
Is it 268?
Yeah, at the crank.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like when I first got it, especially being a bigger, wagon, whatever you want to call it, like I didn't really feel it, No, bro. When I hit the gas in that thing, I was like, oh, I'm 90, 100 on the freeway, no problem. And it's like, and it's got the paddle shifters on there, so I can actually
rev it.
Shift. And I really like that. I don't use it very often, but it is fun because I've always been a manual guy. So to be actually able to take control once in a while and control my gears, it's really nice. But once those big tires went on there, yeah, like if you try to take off from a dead stop, it doesn't throw you back in your seat.
Yeah.
It doesn't anymore. Like when I'm at speed and I hit the gas, like I don't really notice the tire so much. Like it still downshifts and gets it and goes. But just starting from a dead stop, you definitely feel those tires affect your acceleration.
Yeah. It's been the biggest thing for me, even on the opposite end. So I mean, I always have a car that's slammed, and I always have a car that's lifted.
Yeah.
In my dailies, I always the daily that I own right now, I just put some Koenig hypergrams on it, and they're like 16-pound tire or wheels with some, I don't even remember what kind of tires are on it, but dude, you can feel the difference by cutting 6 pounds off. It's like, feels like a go-kart.
Right. It's crazy. I've learned so much through this process because I was totally ignorant going into this. Like I've always driven the Hondas and my Lancer. I've always been kind of a little racer. So diving into this head first and taking on absolutely nothing, I have learned so much. And there's still so much to learn. And this is just the Subaru. I'm sure when I buy it, the time comes where I buy a Jeep or whatever I end up getting at some point, it's going to be and learning to build something new. But I'll be able to build off of what I've learned and the basic knowledge that I have now.
Yeah.
Help people move forward.
Well, there's a huge amount of I guess I don't even know what to call it, but there's this thing that happens when you cut your teeth on the trails in a Subaru. It just makes you different. Like if you can wheel in a Subaru, it really hones your line choice. I always try to stress this to people, man. It's like my initial exposure to off-roading was in like a Subaru sedan with like all season tires, bro. And it was like, I just became just a monster at being like, I can hit that hill with this line and I'll make it. People are like, you're not going to make it. I'll be like, watch me. You know, it just is what it is.
I used to do the same thing because I actually, one of my first cars was an 83 Honda Accord. And I used to take that thing off road. This was back in the day when it wasn't legal to smoke. So like I was 18, 19 years old, go to the Circle K, buy a bottle of Visine and a pack of zigzags. And the clerk would always be like, have fun. You know, it's like drive out to the middle of the desert and smoke. But I off-roaded the hell out of that thing. And same thing, like I would go into places where my girl would look at me and she's like, what are you doing? It's like, I got this, you know? But the Subaru driver, I think, really sets himself apart from the other drivers because we have to be able to drive the car. The car can't get us up the hill. We have to get the car up the hill with our ability and our line choice. You know, you see it real time sometimes on the trail when you see, 10 people go up a hill and only one person can't seem to find the right line after he watched 9 people go up it. It's like,
no, you're 100% right, bro. That's definitely the way that it goes, man. People are they let the car do the work. They're like, oh, I'm lifted, and then they just get sloppy, you know.
Right.
But if they don't have that experience of having to become a tactile driver, like,
right,
you know.
And I usually, like, when I first jump on a hill climb, like if I haven't walked the hill to evaluate the line I need to take coming up it on the fly, I will usually try to go for the harder, more challenging line because I want to test my car. I want to see what it is capable of in case I'm ever out in the middle of nowhere and go up this hill or turn around and go 200 miles back. So I really want to know what the capabilities are. So I'll start with the hard line. If I don't make it, back up and take the easy line. But like that day that me and Bearded Pixel went out trail scouting, we came up on some hills and they looked really nasty. And once you realize that even if you take that extra 5 minutes to get out of the car, hike up that hill, because sometimes it's a lot different when you get near the top than it looks when you're at the bottom. It's way worse. So it's a good idea sometimes to get out and scout that hill and see what you're actually going to be getting into and choose your line wisely in a Subaru.
Yeah, you got to pick your battles, man. You really do.
It's all about keeping those tires on the ground because we don't have the flex. So you got to pick that line that only lets one tire leave the ground at a time.
Exactly. No, I agree. That's half the battle is finding stuff that's, you're going to end up in spots where, one tire comes up and, you're one tire firing in the back. But, dude, it just makes you, like, have you ever driven a Jeep?
Yeah, me and my wife rented a Jeep on a honeymoon, and I was just astounded at how off-road capable it was. Like it was just that's a vehicle where you don't have to be a good driver, man. You can put anybody or anything behind the wheel of that thing, and it better climb whatever you put in front of it.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Just when it's a rental, it's a different story. But the first experience that you ever have in a solid front and rear axle vehicle, whether it's a Toyota or a Jeep, and it's actually off-road outfitted and you're on a trail, bro, you're going to be like, wait a second, this is not even fun.
Bro, it was nuts. We did it in Sedona, and we couldn't really find any like really good trails out there. But in our honeymoon in Colorado, we rented a Jeep. It was off-road outfitted. I disconnected the sway bars, And we, being a rented Jeep, you know, I did some things I probably wouldn't have done if it was my Jeep, you know. But it handled everything that we threw at it. And at one point, like I was kind of peeing my pants a little bit because I went down a trail I probably shouldn't have went down. I think it was a side-by-side trail, but I ended on the side of a hill, and I tried to turn around on this really skinny trail, and now I'm kind of stuck. You know, I'm ass end down the side of the hill, but at this point, it's an older Jeep, and at some point along the ride, the seatbelt's locked up. So me and the wife got no seatbelts, you know. So now we're in this really precarious situation, and I got to the point where it's like I'm not going back up. I have to come down this hill and find a way. So given the situation, I told the wife, get out. Get out as a videotape this, and no matter what happens, do not stop filming. It's like, I don't care if the Jeep's rolling down the hill, do not stop filming. You know, but yeah, I ended up backing down the hills and then just kind of like cradling, you know, just keeping it turned just enough to where it wouldn't spin the tires and get stuck, but it wouldn't turn sideways enough to start rolling down the hill. And I got us out of there, but I learned a lesson about the off-road trails that day. You need to make sure you're on a full-size vehicle off-road trail, not a quad trail.
Yeah, that's one thing I like about Subarus is they have a slightly more narrow track.
Right.
So you can fit them down certain things, but dude, there's nothing worse than being like, okay, I can't go forward.
Right.
I can't turn around. It's like, so then you got to back up, and dude, you're going to lose a mirror or something. I can't tell you how many pinstripes I've obtained having to back up on some just nasty stuff.
It can get scary out there, man. Like, I mean, the thought of rolling down a hill, especially like when those seatbelts wouldn't work. I used to operate forklifts and stuff, and that's one of the things they first teach you is don't jump off the forklift if it flips. You hold on and you stay in that thing.
Otherwise, you're fixing to get crushed.
Yeah, and with a Jeep, that's not really an option. It starts rolling down the hill, it's going to throw you out. So
yeah, I wanted to ask you a question about, you know, I know from all of our conversations, it really seems like this was like everything that you know right now is very recent knowledge that you've acquired. And for me, like I've kind of been doing stuff like this for a while, so it's hard for me to think back to the stuff that just all the things that were real epiphanies to me as far as, you know, equipment selection and off-road driving technique. Do you have any tips or anything as far as like driving off-road? What are some of the most important things that you feel like you've learned as far as off-road driving?
I don't really think I have enough experience to say I've learned anything. I've always been a professional driver. I have a Class A CDL with doubles and triples and doubles. I've been driving trucks since I was 18 years old. So as far as like driving ability, I think, you know, I have a slight edge on people. But it really just comes from experience. And, you know, if you want, we'll get on YouTube and watch some videos. Like I told my wife, and of course she don't listen, but when we first started doing this, I was like, look, as my passenger, I'm going to need you sometimes to get out and guide me through obstacles. I need you to like invest a little bit of time, watch some videos on YouTube and see what I'm talking about. So when I ask you to guide me, you know what to do and where to send my wheels and how to tell me what to do. Of course, she ain't done none of that. So every time I say, hey, guide my wheel up onto that rock. What do you mean?
Tell me how to turn, passenger or driver, and how far do I
like, I can't see my tire, so you just tell me what to do. Well, it is what it is. I love her to death, you know. But yeah, just take your time. I'm a firm believer, especially coming from, you know, being a little speed racer. You don't know the limitations of your vehicle until you meet and sometimes pass the limitations of your vehicle. Being off road, we don't want to flip our shit, so be careful. I've had my car do that a few times, you know, and the wife always grabs a hold of something, lets out a little scream. I know the car wasn't going to flip, but I knew it was going to do that.
What about like throttle control or braking? Do you have any tips for people in that area?
With Subarus, I honestly think it's more the car when it comes to throttle control. And that's one of the things I kind of learned. The first few times I went off road, I think that was where I kind of got myself stuck trying to worry about throttle control instead of just giving the car the beans and letting the all-wheel drive system do what it's supposed to do. With a four-wheel drive, a rock crawler, you got to control that. You really need to control your torque and your wheel spin. With this, a wheel's going to spin if a wheel's going to spin. It's the all-wheel drive symmetrical system that's supposed to do the job when a wheel starts spinning.
Yeah. Are there ever any times where you think in the future you might try a different tire?
If I could find a tire that looked that good, that gave me as much peace of mind on the trail, that was lighter and better with gas mileage, I would go that route. In the future, I might try something new just to see how it affects my gas mileage. But, as long as I can swing it, I'm probably going to keep those tires on there. Like I said, I maybe wish I would have went a little smaller, realizing now how that does make it harder to turn that tire and climb hills, and it actually hurts me a little bit. But I don't think I can go back. I don't think I can go down now that I've. I don't think I can go down now that I've seen those tires on there.
Yeah, it is tough, man. Once you get to that size, because I'm on 29s on an SG Forester, which is substantially bigger. I think they came with like 26-inch tires from the factory, and so a 3-inch difference. It's like, I know I should come down an inch in diameter, but I'm like, nah, I can't do it.
Well, like I said, it's the peace of mind, man. I can't tell you how many times I've been going down a trail and there's a big ass boulder right in the middle of the trail, and I don't have to worry about it. I look at that boulder and I know I can clear it. And because I have that skid plate in the front and that's the lowest point, I know if that hits, well, now I can't clear it and I need to figure something else out. But that skid plate at least let me know, and it did its job. And I need to actually get a skid plate for the rear diff. Like, there's some other protective measures I do need to get prioritized. But with that extra 2 inches from the tires and that extra inch of lift, like that diff's pretty high up there.
Let me ask about your skid plate. Your front skid plate, I know you have the LP Aventure, or however you say it. I'm not French, bro, so I can't pronounce their words.
Well, I was calling it LP Adventure. Like even in my hashtags for months and months, it was LP Adventure. Until one day I realized that it's not adventure, it's Aventure. I was like, oh, I'm an idiot.
Yeah, because I think they speak French in certain parts of Canada, and I think that's what the word. I think it's a French word. I don't know, but does your front skid plate? I know they have kind of a different way of designing skid plates that are sort of a little more integrated. Does yours come back and cover the CVT pan?
Mine is one solid plate that covers all of that. Yeah, that's actually why I chose that plate, and I'm actually really glad I did, because when I see some of the other people's plates, not just as it's one solid plate instead of a few, it's way thicker. It seems to be a lot more quality and durable, and I'm not talking shit on anybody's skid plate. When I looked at the thickness of it, man, it's like twice as thick.
Is it like a 3/16, or do you know what the measurement is?
I think that is. I mean, I'm just guessing, but it's definitely looks thicker than what I'm seeing in a lot of these other ones, especially with some of the damage that I've seen some of them taken. And I spent the extra $100 to get rally washers on it, and I just recently seen a couple of people who didn't. Actually, it's not their fault because they didn't even know they'd never even heard of rally washers. And for those that don't know what rally washers are, it's basically a protective thing that your bolt goes inside. So if it takes a hit, the rally washer takes the hit instead of your bolt, and you can still get your bolt out. It won't shear your bolt off or destroy it, so you can't get a wrench or a socket on there. Yeah,
I don't have rally washers, and I've definitely had to take the grinder to to the edge of a bolt to get a socket back on it.
Yeah, and I actually ended up having to install those at home because that was one of the things that was shipped directly to the shop. And had I known how easy it was to remove and install a skid plate, I thought it was going to be a lot more difficult. So when I chose one, I chose the skid plate with holes because I do my own maintenance. Had I known how easy it was to actually take on and off, which I learned putting the rally washers on, I would have just got the one without the holes, and then I would have that peace of mind as well. Because, you know, I do have to worry about that. I haven't gone out in the snow yet, but, you know, when I'm out there mudding, I've seen pictures of sticks going up through those holes and right through somebody's oil filter. And I don't want that. So,
yeah, it takes a freak accident for something to happen, but it does.
It happens. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's another compromising you know, feature that just reduces a little bit of the, you know, integrity of the skid plate.
Right. Yeah, the structural integrity. Absolutely. Exactly. And actually, LP Aventure was pretty cool too, because the first time I did an oil change, you know, I when I do oil changes, like I don't do them in a minute. Like I take my time. I drain my oil pan, and then I go do some stuff and let every drop of oil drip out of that thing.
Same.
And anyways, I came back, and where it was dripping down, I think it might have been just the angle that I had it jacked up too much at. I don't know. But where it was dripping, it would like caught the lip of the hole, and it just caused a whole ton of oil to pool up on top of the plate, which I didn't realize at the time. And it just caused a big mess, you know. I reached out to LP, and they were actually super cool. Like, they sent me their exact schematics, which they're like, this is classified information. Do not share this shit. They sent me their exact schematics so I could compare it to make sure everything was right. And, you know, everything was. So, like, I don't know why it was doing that, but, like, they were cool about it. So, you know, I can't complain. And because at first I was like, this is going to be the issue. Like, then you just need to send me one without holes. Because if I have to remove the skid plate to do it, to not make a mess, then just send me the one I should have got anyways. But I can't make demands when obviously it's the proper thing. Whatever happened is whatever happened. I just have to be aware of that now going forward with oil changes.
Was that the hole for the drain plug or for the filter?
The drain plug.
Have you seen those Fumoto valves?
I have, and I went looking for them. Like, I got to get them online. I went looking for them at O'Reilly's and stuff, and then nobody carries them on hand. But my concern is once I get the solid skid plate, well, with that hole there, my concern is that valve getting opened up while I'm on the trail. But even when I get a solid skid plate without the holes, my concern is that valve, there won't be enough room for that valve with the skid plate, because the when they installed the skid plate, it was actually like just touching part of my exhaust pipes, and it was causing a vibration noise. So they actually had to get in there and do some grinding and grind away some of my pipes to alleviate that.
I run primitive skid plates. They're actually local to where I grew up. And dude, I've bashed my skid plate into so many boulders that it pushed it up. And same thing, you get that vibration in the cab from it hitting the header. You're just like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think your rear diff though, that thing can take a beating, dude. You can smack that thing on boulders all day. Like,
right. I imagined it wasn't made of glass, but when I saw the diff covers, I was just like, good idea. Same. I've seen the the trailing arm covers and everything, and it's just given that like we talked about before, that these aren't beefed up like Jeeps and some of these other things. The components they're not going to take the beating that we see some of these other vehicles take, and it's a good idea to if you can.
Yeah, I was talking to Blake. Blake's the owner of Primitive Racing. I love Primitive, dude. Like, Blake is tight. He actually drives. He races, and one of the biggest benefits of the rear diff cover is he was telling me that when you do a front, mid, and rear skid, it creates like a very even aerodynamic situation underneath the car for people that are racing. He said that's one of the biggest benefits is if you're racing rally, you're wanting to guide the air in a real specific way. But for most of us that are just like banging around on trails, I've got one on my car because one of my other vehicles came with one, but I've never sweated too much about them. But I'm always looking for excuses to buy parts.
Right. Oh, yeah. It was funny because when we were doing the build and, I was laying out the budget and, with everything going on in the economy, I was watching inflation happen in real freaking time, bro. And it was because while I'm doing this, I haven't even started yet. And everything that I'm buying is getting more expensive by the week. The Chasebays windshield wiper reservoirs, those were, I think, 100 or 110 when I started. When I bought them, they were $20 more each. the full flex off-road bumper, when I started, that was $1,700. Mind you, it wasn't in the budget, but a few months later when I ordered everything, I went back and looked at it, it was $2,000. So this kept happening with start. So there was a moment where I sat the wife down. I'm like, look, I know the budget's the budget, but right now we have the money because we refinanced the house.
Let's effing go.
I was like, here's the reality. It's like, we can piece this out over the next couple of years and everything's going to cost us more. I was like, or we can just pay for all this right now and literally save ourselves probably a few $1,000s. And obviously that was just me trying to be a good salesman, but she just looked at me and goes, I don't remember what she said exactly, but there was some foul language involved. And so I recognized right away I just not a fight. I wanted to even attempt to win.
Yeah. But, at the end of the day, when you already have everything pulled apart or you're in the shop, you say, hey, I have all these parts.
Right.
You're going to get you're not going to spend as much on labor and all that stuff.
But it was just a crazy inflation of parts. Like, why I've never watched inflation happen, excuse me, in real time. And I was watching everything that I wanted to buy go up in price week by week.
Yeah. Hey, let me jump around a little bit. I wanted to ask you this earlier. You're totally right though with the inflation thing. It pisses me off, especially buying stuff for the house. This is my first time owning a home, and I'm just like, bro, can I just like get some Desitin real quick because this does not feel good.
Why like the build's like almost on hold, because like when I started this, we started with the budget knowing this is what we can spend right now, and moving forward we'll do this and do that. It might take a few months to get this or that, but we'll save every week, every month. Like we weren't rolling in dough, but we could put money away every week, or money away every week, every month. Even if it was just a little bit, we could do it. We ain't been able to put money in savings in fucking months, bro. And
yeah, this is crazy.
Which means the build's on hold, man. Like I can't put any money away for the next thing for the bill. It's just keeping the roof over the head, food in the refrigerator. And I mean, what's killed me most recently is everything that had to happen with the cars. The wheels and tires had to happen. At the very same time, I had to get 4 new tires on the Mazda. At the same time that was happening, the Subaru came due for its 60,000 mile service, which is a $1,600 service, most of which I did myself. But anyways, and then at the same time, more stuff with the Mazda. And it was just like things kept happening before I could get things taken care of. And it's just like now I'm finally starting to get that list of things knocked out. So hopefully, I can start getting things put away in the savings again.
Man, we finna have to start some OnlyFans accounts, bro. You can sell beard and mustache pics, and I'll sell like weenus pics or something. I don't know. But I wanted to ask your just your journey into the Subaru market. Is this your first Subaru?
It is. It is.
And then when we first talked, you mentioned that you'd been a fan of the Outback since you were younger. So I kind of wanted to ask about that. Like, what was it about those early Outbacks that you liked? And what was your experience like seeing those and thinking they were cool? And then, I know you didn't initially buy this car to off-road it, but what was your purchasing process like? Like, what drew you to the idea of jumping into a Subaru?
All right. Well, I guess we'll start with the what drew me to Subarus. Like I said, going back to when I was a kid, that kind of where it ties into the name. Marketing.
Oh, yes. That's not a knife.
You got it. There you go. Like I said, it wouldn't take too many hints. But exactly. Yeah, as a kid, that was one of my favorite movies, man. Crocodile Dundee, or good old Mick Dundee. So forever, I'd wanted a Subaru Outback for that reason. And so when we got this car, its name was going to be Mick. And I knew it. It's going to be Mick. And when my wife said Sir Lancelot, I almost hit the ejecto-ceto button. Like, get the fuck out of your mind. It's like, get out of here with that. That's where the name Mick came from. And then once I decided to do this build, that's when I decided to do the Instagram. And that's where the lifted Mick came from. Because, you can call it Mick, you can call it lifted Mick, whatever. But the lifted Mick,
We need to get you a decal of a Bowie knife on that thing.
There's eventually going to be a Crocodile Dundee sticker on there somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah, that Paul Hogan, bro. I remember those commercials. That was like, yeah. Subaru, dude. Subaru is just such a weird brand. It's like they were so obscure when I was a kid, and yet they still sold a good amount of them. Judging by the amount that are still on the road today, I'm like, yo, they actually sold a good number of these things in the 90s.
Yeah.
And
that was one of the things. That was another thing that kind of drew me to Subarus, because, like I said, I've always, not always, but I've had 3 Hondas because they're so reliable. You know, and that's I beat the shit out of my car, so I need something I know I can beat up on and it's going to start in the morning. And that's one thing I saw with Subarus, man. Is there was, unlike you see with Chevys and a lot of these other, domestic vehicles, there's not 20, 30-year-old versions of those on the road still. You see a lot of old Subarus, Toyotas, Hondas on the road still. And in fact, I've seen people who have on their back window on a Subaru 400,000 miles. They like proudly wrote that on their back window. And it's just like, if I'm going to spend money on something, I want something reliable. I want something that's going to hold its value, just like a Subaru, Hondas, Toyotas do. And so that's a big draw to the brand. Besides the fact that I liked it, I knew it was something I could get and was going to stay with me for years. Because I don't typically buy a car and just have it and get rid of it in a couple of years. Like I'm the guy that buys a car and puts 150, 200,000 additional miles on the car.
Yeah. Oh, I'm the same way, man. I think the highest mileage that I ever reached on a Subaru, I think it was 297 before I sold it. And it still ran great. I was moving and I was like, I don't need this anymore. And,
Same thing with me. When I got rid of my last car before this, the Lancer, it had almost 260,000 miles on it, and it was running like a champ. But it had just become a money pit, and I used it to get around all day. And given the circumstances, I couldn't afford to have it keep costing me money. So I just decided, having enough experience with 200,000 plus mile vehicles, I knew the car was becoming a money pit. And it's just, I told the wife, I was like, look, we can, in the last year, we've put this amount of money into this car, which is equivalent to a freaking car payment. So we can sell this car and go get another, or we can just I can keep missing work every time this thing breaks down, or keep having to dump money into it every other week. Because like the last thing that finally made me just say I'm done was the radiator started leaking. And this was right after I put $3,000 into it just to get it to pass emissions. And it was nothing major, but it wasn't something I could do myself. I could do the oxygen sensor under the hood, but after we did that, the one in the back
downstream
one be done. So I had to get the cat replaced, had to do that, and at the end of the day, it ended up being like $3,000. And it was just after everything else had happened, and then that, and then to not even a month later, then the radiator started leaking. I like, I'm done. I'm done. Yeah, and it's just, when they get up in that high mileage, just like with my Hondas, if you had them, they become money pits. There comes a day where you're just throwing money away, like a dog chasing its tail. You're never going to stop putting money into a high mileage vehicle at some point.
Yeah.
What was fun about this was getting a low mileage vehicle and finally being able to dump money into it in a way I wanted to.
Yeah, and that money is not spent just getting it up to par.
Right.
It's like
get on the road.
yeah. That's for sure. And
I tell you what, having to drop $3,000 on a car that is running perfectly fine just to get the stupid light on the dash to turn off so I can re-register it. Like, are you kidding me, bro? 2 months later, I sold the car for $1,500. Like, and the dude got a smoking deal. I probably could have got $2,500, $3,000 out of that car, and I should have, but I got it. It did its purpose for me, and I just kind of, whatever, man, like, take the car.
Yeah.
And ended up selling it a week later to somebody I knew for $2,000.
Let me jump into this warranty stuff. I know you wanted to talk about that, but I'm also always trying to gather information, because this usually just comes down to an individual thing, because I've heard horror stories, and I've also heard people say, oh, dude, it was no problem, because it depends on who the service manager is, whoever is head of that department that interfaces with SOA, like, they either are trying to save money for the brand, or they're like, no, we're just trying to take care of the customer. What are some of the biggest things that you would maybe want to share with people about just the warranty as it pertains to Subaru themselves? And then it sounds like, I don't know if you bought a third party
warranty?
I bought it from the dealership after the fact, because it was at 35,000 miles, so it still had some factory warranty left on it. But we went ahead and paid that extra. Like I'm really anti-warranty. I buy good cars. I shouldn't need a warranty. But when we were signing the papers and he said $18 a month, I can't not take the warranty and have that peace of mind for bumper to bumper coverage for $18 a month. So we went ahead and got it. But just like you were saying, it really is on a case-to-case basis, because I talked to several service managers. I talked to like corporate Subaru, and I even talked to like Subaru's corporate warranty company. And one of the service managers was super cool. He spent like an hour and a half on the phone with me. He took my VIN number, looked it up. And mind you, I had a Carfax when I bought the car, but he looked it up himself, and so he could look at it. And he gave me a lot of peace of mind by kind of breaking down that my car has 35,000 miles on it, clean Carfax, and no problems thus far, which kind of means that if I was going to have problems, something probably would have arose by now, so that made me feel a little better about doing the mods, because the reality is, like you're saying, case-to-case basis. One guy told me he's seen cars come in somewhat heavily modded, no problem, got their warranties covered. And he's seen cars come in with, one little thing done, not that big of a deal, declined for that one little thing. And then what I discovered through talking to him, which I found just kind of mind-blowing, was actually not that mind-blowing, pretty simple, but just simply off-roading your vehicle is grounds for them to decline the warranty claim. And I was like struck by that, because I'm like, so you mean to tell me you market and sell these as off-road capable vehicles, but if I take it off-road and break it, you won't cover the warranty?
Yeah, that's kind of frustrating, isn't it? Because if you look at the commercials, 20% of the footage is on pavement. The rest is all out in the middle of nowhere. And I think
drifting it around corners.
Yeah. And I think it's important for people to think about that. And you are going to have some service managers that will literally look you up on social media.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to have a problem.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, if you think that you might have a warranty issue on your hand, I mean, we're not trying to look at like the manufacturers and the service department as like a meal ticket, because if you really do abuse the car,
right.
I mean, come on, but at the end of the day, it's like, you don't want to give them any ammo. And I'm always telling people like, put your stuff on private, like 3 weeks in advance, so that if they want to go look you up, there's no evidence for them to nitpick. Because if the car really does have a manufacturer's defect or something that fails prematurely that you genuinely feel is on their, on their shoulders, you don't want to give them any reason to like unnecessarily deny your claim,
Well, and the reality is a lot of people don't realize this, that your warranty company, much like your insurance company, has an entire department solely, absolutely 100% dedicated to figuring out a reason to deny your claim.
Yeah, they just want to F you.
That is their only purpose in life, is to find a way to deny your claim. And that was funny, because the guy that I talked to from the actual warranty company, I'm trying to have a conversation with this dude, like a constructive back and forth. And I swear to God, I was talking to Ben Stein from the Visine commercials, just 100% monotone. Any modifications to your car will cause us to void any warranty claims. And it was just like, it was like I was talking to a robot, the only answer I could get out of the guy. And I kept trying to like come at it from different angles. I'm like, well, I'm doing this, I'm subframe dropping this, I'm leveling this, I'm doing everything I can to keep specs as close to factory and stock as I can, whilst doing what I'm doing. Well, anything you do will void the warranty. And it's just like, I could get an answer, one answer. That was the only answer I could get from the dude. But like you were saying, it's a roll of the dice, and like if I have to take it in for a warranty claim, I'll probably pull the Insta stickers off, and like I said, set my settings on private. But the reality is, when they look at my car, lifted 3 inches, 30-inch tires, the bumper's cut off, I don't think it's going to take much more than that for them to say, we're not covering this shit.
Yeah. Yeah. When I worked for Subaru, I would actually I would be out there in the service drive doing something, and I would hear the service writers tell people, hey, take this home, put your stock wheels and tires back on, bring it here, because, you know, he's saying, like, I genuinely believe that this issue is not even remotely related to the fact that you've done this mod. You know, it's just wheels and tires, and they're real close to being exactly what you would have left the showroom floor with. He's like, but I don't want to put in the notes that there's anything aftermarket when it asks. So if you do that, I can work with you a little bit better. We can both be a little more above board with this. So yeah, it's so important to actually, if you can get on the phone or go in and talk to the, you know, service writers and the, you know, service manager, it actually makes a huge difference in them wanting to be on your side, you know?
Right. And I'm actually, I'm trying to kind of strike up a relationship with my local Subaru and see if, you know, I can have them on my side. You know, I've seen some of these people have some sort of partnerships with their local dealerships, and those dealerships use their Subaru to feature sales and to feature events. I would love for my car to be one of those, especially if that means they can help me keep, you know, just like that little sensor we were talking about earlier. If they can help me figure out a way to keep that on there, and like when it comes time to cut my rear bumper and keep my sensors and my cameras and keep everything stock the way it is, like that, I want them on my side to help me with these things. Because, you know, obviously I don't want to undo my sensors. I don't want to lose my rear camera. You know, and they have the aftermarket ones where you can just set it on the back of a trailer and it goes to your mirror. But I have that nice screen, and you know, it works with the steering, and it shows the little lines, and it looks nice. And I want to keep everything factory and stock as possible with all the modifications that are happening.
Yeah, it is nice to retain as much of a stock feeling and look as possible with, you know, with added capability. But
a balance, you know?
Yeah. Because it's like, you know, this is a nice, I mean, because you got a nice car. Bro, your suspension costs what I paid for mine. Like, no lie. Just your coilovers. I spent like $1,800 on that Forester. Right. Because it was like at the beginning of COVID where everybody was freaking out. I was like, well, I have money in the bank. I'm going to go buy cars. Right. And so I bought it, bro. I bought it for like $1,800 or something.
Most of my cars have been like that, bro. This is, I think, only my second or third car payment I had ever had in my life. But other than that, all my cars have been between $1,000 and $6,000 cash, except for my one Honda that I bought after refinancing my first house. I went out and paid $10 cash for that. You know, but outside of that, it's always been, you know, a few $1,000s cash changes hand. Now that car is mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also wanted to ask about, you know, because we're talking about warranty stuff, just, you know, kind of trying to take care of the car as good as possible. I wanted to ask about your CVT cooler. Can you kind of talk a little bit about, I know you mentioned already that you have one, but what was the install process like? And do you know if there's anything specifically different between a cooler that's marketed as a CVT cooler and a different transmission cooler, or what's kind of been your whole experience surrounding that?
I really don't. I'm not going to lie. I don't really know a whole lot about that. Chris actually installed it at the shop. But from what I have seen and what everybody's told me, those installs are actually super, super simple. Right?
Yeah, you just cut a line, bro.
That's what I've heard. You cut a line and put the cooler in the middle. You know, so especially with somebody who does those sorts of things all day, super simple. As far as the difference between oil coolers and stuff, like when I said when we first ordered it, we ordered just an oil cooler that would, you know, work, and then Mishimoto came out with a CVT specific transmission cooler. I don't know what the difference was as far as functionality. They both do the same thing, so I don't know. My only guess would be and hope would be that the Mishimoto specific CVT transmission cooler would function better. You know, that would be my only assumption and hopes. But I really don't know what the difference would be because they both do the same exact thing. They both provide the same function.
Yeah, I was just curious because I was thinking about that. I was like, you know, I don't know if there's actually like what the difference would be. So I wasn't sure because most people, you know, all they have to do is put the word on the packaging to make people think like, oh, I need this. Right. You know, like, oh, this is specifically for me. And it's weird because it's like sometimes that's what you have to do to get people to buy something that's good for them.
but like on the subject of the transmission, the transmission was my biggest concern with that big of tires.
Yeah.
That was one thing that the Subaru guy talked to me a lot about, was, of course, being, modern day computerized CVT, how, everything spins at a certain rate and the transmission should shift at a certain speed and everything's computerized. And the moment you change the wheel diameter, it changes all of that, and just a little bit. But, the computer isn't updated for that. So I don't know how it affects everything exactly, but it had me worried. That's why it was like CVT transmission cooler is a must. And let's just hope for the best, because those bastards are expensive.
They're essentially non-serviceable. Nobody at this point works on them. People are just like, no, we replace it. We're just going to replace it, because nobody knows how to split them apart and rebuild them yet. And it's just, okay, cool. You got $5,000 and then $1,800 for install.
Right. And that actually sounds relatively cheap for one of those transmissions. So those, especially the ones with the paddle shifters, I don't know if mine's any more expensive, but like going back to the Lancers, when I was talking to one of the Lancer salesmen, I was talking about the different Evos, because I was, I really wanted one. And he was specifically telling me which ones not to buy. And one of them was because it had the paddle shifters and the transmission was $15,000.
Yeah. And if you own an Evo, we already know what we're trying to do. We're trying to mash gears and cause a scene. Blow that thing apart, man. It's like, no. I think, let's see. Okay, we got like 7.5 minutes before this thing wants to kick us off again. I feel like I've hit everything that I wanted to ask you about. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about specifically?
I think I covered everything, man. Like, I covered all the mods, the twins, the visors. You saw my gun mount that my wife.
Yeah.
I love that thing.
Same.
The rock lights, I went out there and looked at those this morning, those RGK rock lights. Mm-hmm. Can't wait to get those installed. I just got to get those wheel well holes dealt with.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah. What, it sounds like we already kind of touched on this, but before we talked this morning, I was going to ask you about your air down setup. So sounds like you are just airing down when you're with other people that have the gear.
Yeah. Eric, Bearded Pixel, he lets, 2 times he's gone out, he's let me use his setup, and his setup is legit. And that's exactly how I'm going to do mine.
What does he have?
He's got the, what is it? The Viv Air. I want to say it's the Viv Air. That's the
right. Yeah. Viair.
Yeah. Viair. He's got that set up in his back, and he's got it already pre-wired. So he doesn't have to get it out and hook it up to his battery. He's got it pre-wired. So it sits it back there in a spare tire carrier, and he just flips a switch, and he's got his Morphlate set up. So, you're deflating and inflating all your tires all at once. And we do both of our rigs in 10, 15 minutes, if that, to air up, air down takes, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what I want to do is that setup. And seeing that too, because I want to get an air horn. Wife says no, but I think I'm going to do it without her knowledge. Seeing that he got that air compressor set up, I think I can do the same now and actually put that air compressor mounted back there and find somewhere underneath to get the horn and scare the shit out of people.
Yeah, I'm running actually Viair 440p, and I keep it in the Jeep because that has the biggest tires of anything I own. I have a smaller compressor that I carry in my Subaru. But dude, those Viair compressors, even if you get the ones that just connect to the battery, dude, those compressors are so quick. It'll take my 33s. I got 33 by 12.5 15s, it's a meaty tire. Dude, it'll zip those from 0 PSI to 25 in like, maybe I'm off here, but like 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's great.
It's crazy, dude. It's absurd.
Out there, especially when it's hot. Like
yeah, exactly. Usually we do a lot of snow wheeling out here, but dude, I'm telling people all the time. They're like, oh, I don't want to spend $200 on an air compressor. I'm like, bro. They're like, oh, I'll just get one that is $50. I'm like, $150? If you factor in the amount of time extra that you sit there waiting for the $50 one to pump up, you've already lost 17 hours of like time you could be working and buying, 5 more air compressors, you dodo.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's real, man. It's like we were talking about before, spend the money now so you don't have to spend the money later. Because the reality is you're going to buy that shitty little compressor, and in a while you're going to get sick of it, and you're going to go spend that extra money on the real thing. And that's one reason why, like, I don't have a roof rack and I don't have some of the other things, because I don't want to go spend a couple of $100 to get something just for now, to then have to take that and basically throw it away and then go buy what I really want. Like, I just wait and deal with what I got until I can save and get the roof rack I really want, and all the little things that come with it.
Yeah, no, I think that's buy once, cry once.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like, if you're gonna half butt it, you're spending more money, and all you're doing is buying yourself the experience of telling other people not to do what you did. Like,
right. And I'm shooting myself in the, or not shooting myself, but kind of kicking myself now, because when we bought the car, like, I said something about, oh yeah, we'll have to get some roof bars. And the salesman was like, oh, we'll throw those in. But we got so excited, we totally forgot. And then like 3 weeks later, I remembered, and I didn't have the heart to go back and be like, can I get those bars now, please? Now that I've gone back and seen how much those bars are, I really wish I would have gone back there and said, can I get those bars now, please?
What? From the dealer, they're like $500.
They're like $800, bro.
Oh, dang!
That's how much the Prince-2 rack costs.
Yeah.
But if I had those bars, like, I could go get me like a decent basket for like $150, $200, and I'd be set right now.
You don't have the swing outs on the Touring?
No, and I honestly don't like those. Like, I think they're ugly as shit.
They are.
Great for functionality, because you can put them away and go through car washes and stuff. Like, once I get that roof rack, I won't be able to go through the car wash anymore.
Yeah, you've got the clean rails on the Touring, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think
bars, but I was shocked, because you look on Amazon, you see those bars $100, $200. I went to the dealership a few weeks ago and asked, and he pulled them up $800. I about fell over, bro. I was like, dude, that's what the whole roof rack cost at Prince-2. Like, $800.
No. Yeah.
But because we keep it in the garage, I got to keep that roof rack as low as possible, because once that tire goes on there, it still needs to be able to get in and out again. Yeah.
You got to air down just to get in the garage.
And I already messed it up once, like just a couple weeks after we got it. And you know how a lot of the newer cars have that kind of fin antenna?
Yeah.
As opposed to an actual antenna. I got in the car and went to leave, and I flipped the visor down, and the garage door opener was on the visor, and I had the radio on. So when I flipped it, it must have engaged the button. So I couldn't hear the garage door opening was closing as I started backing up. And it's actually fortunate, because it could have been much worse. But the garage door just caught that plastic fin, and it popped up a little bit, So that was a couple of weeks after getting the car, bro. I was so mad, because I mean, that's like, I took it to the dealership. Like, they're gonna have to pull down the headliner. Like, they gotta do stupid stuff to fix it. And fortunately, it hasn't leaked, because that was my big worry. It's like, once I took it to the car wash and saw that it doesn't leak, I was like, okay, we'll fix that when we get to that. But man, talk about some bad luck.
It still hurts, bro.
It does. It's like this is my first nice car. So it's like, to go out and buy a nice car and mess something up on it, even if nobody else knows. When they look at the car that's happened, I know that stupid little fin on my roof is broken.
Yeah, good stuff. Is there anything else you want to hit?
Went a lot more in depth this time. I definitely think we were able to give some more useful information.
Yeah, dude, this has been sick, man.
Absolutely, man. It's been quite a pleasure.
I love it, man. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and sign off, bro. But thanks again, man. This is sick. We got.